We are getting a crash course on the City of Calgary's bylaws regulating cannabis. Matt Zablosky is the project lead with the City of Calgary on the legalization of cannabis, and a lot of people are talking about this right now, Matt. I guess first off the top, is the city ready? In your opinion, do you think you guys are ready?
Absolutely.
You're ready. Okay, so bring it on. We're good to go. And the first question off the top is, the City of Calgary, in its scope of kind of regulating things, you're mostly about public consumption, retail locations, zoning, that type of thing, bylaw enforcement and policing, right?
Correct.
That's kind of the areas to cover. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've asked a lot of people online, and we've interviewed people on the street with questions. And I'm going to go to the first one right off the top here. This is from a guy named Jason. And Jason wants to know, Matt, to know what a lot of people want to know. We've had a lot of similar questions. Jason wants to know, like a lot of people, where and how cannabis will be sold.
Right.
How would it work buying marijuana in the city of Calgary?
There you go. How would it work to buy marijuana in the City of Calgary?
So there's a couple options. There's going to be retail stores that are open as of tomorrow. There's only going to be two.
Two for tomorrow, okay.
So they're both down, I believe, on McLeod Trail.
Yeah.
And then the provincial government is also opening an online retail store. So, and you can purchase cannabis there as of 12:01 on Wednesday morning.
So essentially just stroke after midnight, so to speak, right? Okay. Okay, so that's interesting. So two retail locations, but there must be more coming down the pike, right?
Definitely, yeah. So from the city's perspective, we've got an additional 10 that have municipal business licenses already. And so those are ones which we feel comfortable saying, from a city perspective, they're ready to go.
Yeah.
We also know that they've got their due diligence checks from the AGLC, meaning that the only real step for those ones is just getting their final checks from the AGLC and getting the stock in. So we've got another 10 that are waiting. Like I said, they've currently got city business licenses. They had them last week.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of getting that final stage. We heard from the AGLC yesterday that they're looking at another 80 to 100, I think, over the course of the next month in the province of Alberta.
In the province, okay.
Yeah, and I would say that in Alberta, in Calgary specifically, we're going to have a good number of those. So,
good number, so lots of places for people to buy it if they choose to do so, right?
Definitely.
Okay, very good. Okay, the next, so once you buy it, of course, you're going to consume it, right? And that's where a lot of questions that we found on the street as well. This next question, Matt, is from a gentleman named David. David is curious about the consumption location rules in Calgary.
All right, where are people going to smoke it? Are they going to be smoking in public? Are they going to be smoking on the train station platforms? Are they going to be smoking in indoor smoking areas, I guess?
So a couple of questions there. Like outdoor consumption is banned, right?
Yeah, so recreational, at least, or non-medical cannabis consumption is prohibited in public in Calgary. We have made an exemption for medical cannabis consumption. Sure. So people who are consuming medical cannabis, they're going to be subject to the same regulations as somebody who's smoking a cigarette, so the 5 meters from a doorway, that type of thing. But those people who do have medical prescriptions or medical documents for their cannabis are going to be allowed to consume in public. For people wanting to consume non-medical cannabis, there's going to be the opportunity potentially at festivals and events. We have we've created an exemption there, and then there is an option in the bylaw to create what are called designated cannabis consumption areas.
Oh, okay.
So far, there's not been enough interest in those to have one of those come forward.
Or political will, so to speak.
That's another way of seeing it, I suppose. So yeah, there is that option in the bylaw currently. However, like I say, that's not something that we've seen yet, and certainly not something that's going to be available for October 17th.
David was also touching on indoor smoking areas like, cafes, that type of thing.
Yeah, and I guess I wanted to mention specifically trains and C-train platforms.
Oh, yeah.
Again, specifically not there.
And
that's something that both medical and non-medical consumers are going to have to abide by, is the idea that there's no consumption, or sorry, I should say no smoking or vaping of cannabis on C-trains and so forth. As far as places to consume, kind of private lounges or anything like that, the province has said so far that cafes or lounges, places where you can consume indoors, similar to a bar for liquor, those will not be allowed, at least for the coming year. They've indicated they're going to look at it again when the federal government allows for edible cannabis products. But for the time being, with it being only, primarily dried flower that's being sold, they're not going to allow for cafes and lounges in the time being.
Okay, and just touching on edibles real quick, before it becomes legal, you can make your own edibles, right? But you just can't buy them pre-made. That's the rule right now?
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
In the sense that, yeah, people can take it home, can make their, whatever type of food they want to with it. It's just not something you're going to be able to purchase commercially available edible products.
Sure. Okay, very good. Another quick question with respect to the province. We should also tell you that the province set the age in Alberta, which is 18. We should say that right away.
Correct.
You have to be 18 or older to buy and consume cannabis. Okay, our next question is coming off Facebook. A woman named Joanne, Matt was asking, why can't the laws be the same in every town and city in Canada? And that's kind of a political question, isn't it?
Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah.
It's certainly a patchwork. I don't think that anybody would make mention that it's not. So across Canada, the federal government left it up to each province to individually regulate how they saw fit. And in Alberta, there's also that kind of level of variance that we see too, just because the province has said that they're going to regulate it to a certain level. So, for example, the province is treating it, for the most part, akin to tobacco as far as where you can smoke it or consume it. But they've given the opportunity to municipalities to further regulate that. And what we've seen across the province is every municipality having a different approach to that. I haven't seen a single municipality that has not further regulated it beyond what the province has allowed for.
Yeah.
But it certainly does create a patchwork as far as regulations across the country. And that being said, from my perspective, it gives a great kind of experiment across the country in the sense that we will obviously continue to look at our own bylaws to make sure and
to learn, right?
Exactly, to see what's working, to see what's not working, and then we can look at other jurisdictions as well. And there's the whole gamut of everything from strictly prohibiting public consumption to allowing it more or less everywhere where you allow a cigarette. And we can look at those other jurisdictions, see how Calgary's working, see how those other jurisdictions working, and tweak as necessary.
Okay. Matt is a very busy human, but he's agreed to stick around in about 10 minutes at roughly 7:35. More questions. We have questions, of course, about enforcement, and we haven't even touched on that yet. Thank you, Matt. Matt Zablosky from the City of Calgary. He's the lead on the legalization bylaw-wise, how the city's going to handle things coming tomorrow. Matt's going to stand by for that. It is 7:27. It's 4 degrees at the airport. We have your traffic updates. We have news for you, and also a spectacular-looking forecast. That and more straight ahead on Breakfast Television. Thank you, Michelle. We continue getting a crash course on the City of Calgary's bylaws regulating cannabis. Matt Zablosky, the project lead with the City of Calgary, answering all of our questions this morning. Thank you for sticking around, Matt, because we have a lot left to cover. And let's get right at it. Again, these are questions directly from you. This is via Facebook. And Sandy wants to know, what about the proximity to children? I think she's talking about the retail locations close to children. And what's the city's position?
Right. So retail stores do have required separation distance from schools. And that was something that the provincial government enacted. They have a 100-meter separation, I believe, from schools. Yeah. The city bumped that up, and it's 150 meters that a retail store has to be from any school, from the school property itself. So that was something we heard as a concern from Calgarians. It's also something we saw kind of replicated across all the other jurisdictions in the United States, for example, that have already legalized.
Okay, Sandy was also talking about, she says she runs a day home, and she was afraid that, people will be smoking at all hours close, but of course, smoking pot is banned in public throughout the City of Calgary, right? So
in public for sure. Now there is, we've heard concerns already about people concerned about their neighbor, for example, consuming cannabis in their own backyard. We're not going to be regulating that as the city, obviously, so there's not going to be any bylaw enforcement showing up to enforce on private property. Okay,
enforcement is the next topic I want to cover. Thank you for leading into that, Matt. And Bart online was talking about how will officials decide if someone is impaired, through cannabis consumption, and that's a policing issue, isn't it?
Yeah. So the piece that bylaw officers are looking at is really just public consumption. They're not dealing with impaired so much. Obviously, Calgary Police Service, that's a big chunk of their pie as far as cannabis legalization goes. Is the aspects of impaired driving, for example, being on top of mind for a lot of people right now. And that's something that I would let them speak to.
Talk to Calgary Police about that. Yeah, very good, Matt. How about when it comes to enforcing, bylaw officers enforcing, public consumption, say someone's in Riley Park or, on Nose Hill, that type of thing, gets called in, an enforcement officer shows up. What will she or he likely do?
It's the same as variety of other bylaws we've got on the books right now, in the sense that it's a continuum of education to enforcement.
Yeah.
So really, it's that first step of education, and ticketing where necessary. The ticket for it will run $100. One of the things that we heard from Calgarians is the idea of treat this as much as alcohol as possible. And so as far as the fine goes, it's very much in line with what we have for open alcohol in public.
Okay, and have you been able to get extra money for extra bylaw officers to deal with this? Or, or is that the ongoing challenge?
There was an announcement yesterday from the province indicating that they will be dedicating $3.84 million over the next 2 years, specifically to Calgary. I think it's $11 million in all of Alberta. In Calgary, the city of Calgary, just in preparation for this, we've already spent $3.7 million. And certainly what we heard from the federal government, for example, was that they've got an excise tax of 10%. 3/4 of that was indicated to go to the province, and of that money that was going to the province, they wanted a third of it to go to municipalities in order to cover off the costs. That's not what we heard announced yesterday, and that's something that we certainly still hope to see.
That's going to be the mayor, for example, talking with the premier. Okay, that's at that level for that. And we should mention everything that Matt's talking about today. We're going to put this information on our website, of course, breakfasttelevision.ca, and also the City of Calgary's web address is on your screen here, calgary.ca/cannabis. All the rules, all the regulations, all the bylaws, all that information is on that website. And thank you, Matt, for sharing your time with us. I know we kept you on for quite a bit this morning, but lots of useful information as we count down to legalization day tomorrow. Matt Zablosky, the project lead with the City of Calgary, regulating cannabis. We have news, weather, and traffic.